time to have our second keynote, who will tell us some more about the business side of it, like on top of the API industry, what's happening. And so I'm really glad to invite Cyril Vart, VP Strategy of Fabernovel. Hello, Cyril. How are you?
Hi, Mehdi. Fine, and you?
I'm doing great. I hope the state of API industry is helping you to develop your ideas. I invite you to share your slides.
Yes. So let's get started. I have 20 minutes as usual.
You have 25 plus 5-minute questions. Yes.
Okay, but usually I take 40, so that should do it. So let's get started. Hi, everyone, and everyone who's listening. I had the niceness of coming to listen to us. I'm going to tell you roughly exactly the same thing as Mehdi, but different. And as he mentioned, since, 10 years next year of Apidays, we've always been trying at Fabernovel to basically look back at the year and try to see where we're at, not necessarily only from a technical standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. And this year, and we started last year, but I think it's going to become a big topic, an ethical standpoint. I'll come back to that. And to do that, I chose a small storytelling. I mean, I guess everybody saw the movie, and if you didn't, please do. It's one of the best movies in the world, which is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And for those who want to know if they should continue to listen, we'll talk about three things. We'll talk about the fact that API works, which shouldn't be a big deal, but you'll see that it works way better than we envisioned. Suddenly, that's the bad news. They come with a cost of sales and marketers now, and that's kind of what Mehdi started to hint about. And thirdly, that we need to talk about ethics. So these are the three topics I'm going to cover. If both the three of them are boring, please, there's thousands of very interesting people at Apidays, and enjoy discussing with them. And if you can give me 25 minutes of your time, we'll go through that. So the first good news is very simple, is that it works. And when I say it works, it doesn't only work technically, it doesn't necessarily work toward funding, etc. But using APIs makes businesses better. And what businesses? Something that happened this year, and it was a premiere since, I think, 10 or 12 years, is that some classical business is a business whose business is to move physical things, to fabricate products, to put them on shelves, to sell them to consumers or other people. And if you remember, these are what we call the incumbent business, the not so nice business, because they are not fully digital, they are not all software. Well, some of them, LVMH, Nike, Walmart, and unsurprisingly, Walt Disney, actually have performances last year's from a valuation standpoint that are above the GAFAs. So, of course, for those who do maths, it's easier when you come from lower. Nonetheless, they start to have three-digit growth rates, three-digit growth in valuation, and that's because of software, thus APIs. Just as an illustration of what it can do, for instance, you know that LVMH, although there's the confinements and the pandemic, is doing very well, thank you. And part of this doing very well is starting more and more to use, technologies, software, thus APIs. And we work with them, and we know they use APIs, and they have a full API bank, and they know what to do with them to entertain its customers, to create new fantastic experiences, to be the first one to mix NFTs and gaming with a historical brand that is Vuitton. And that kind of dynamics, that kind of usage of all the richness of the APIs platform, of all what you can imagine assembling them, is probably a big part of their performance. I say a big part because that's still a lot of other things that they do very, very well, including luxury products. Nonetheless, this is something that I think is factored in the price, and we know because that's what we study. This one is my favorite. I think I talked about it last year, but really, I think as a user and as a business observer, that what Nike is doing is fantastic. First, it's the first one, I think, that as a company that was excellent in building atomic products, namely shoes and sneakers and running sneakers, to have declared 2 years ago with the new CEO that they are becoming a tech company. Actually, he didn't say we are becoming a tech company. He said we are a tech company. And if you look at Nike's portfolio of products, it's true. Today, most of the usage of Nike's ecosystem goes through applications. You can install up to 12 of them if you're running. That goes from something that helps you choosing your shoe size up to helping you find partners with whom you can run and compare and compete. They have APIs basically having data from myself circulating everywhere. And something that few people realize is that as of today, they have over 150 million members of the Nike Run Club, which is kind of a Nike Prime if you compare it to Amazon, which is a piece of software that delivers you value if you are a Nike user in any way. And same as Amazon Primes, you pay a little bit, you subscribe to it to use even more Nike products and services. So really, they understood, I think, what it means to be an API/software fueled company. They never lost sight of their core trade, which is building some of the best sneakers in the world and some of the best running shoes in the world, or golf material, if you ask me, and sublime it with software. And I think this is a very, very good sign. The good sign is that it works. Their revenue is growing, their valuation is growing 3 digits. And really, it means that when you put up a strategy, when you start to ask, what experience, how can I please my consumers with APIs, it works. It works also in B2B. Walmart, that a lot of us would have given dead against Amazon, is growing again, is getting momentum again, simply by using technologies, thus APIs again, to innovate, to create new products. More importantly, because apart from the droning and the self-driving cars and delivering, they did something that few people know, is that they opened the market space. Walmart is helping other brands sell to their customers with just a marketplace and not being in the middle completely, apart from providing consumers and catalog. And that is very new. To be clear, that's something they probably wouldn't have done 5 years ago, not only because they didn't really understood APIs, but because they thought that wasn't how you do retail. And now that they're embracing it, well, result shows, and once again, one of the fastest fully digital company growth in last year. Last but not least, because I guess we all either tasted it or watched it or subscribed to it. I'm part of the third category. My grandson, strangely enough, seems to like Disney Plus. But Disney basically did another Netflix, did it very well. One thing that makes us tell that they probably used a lot more APIs than we thought is that, if you remember, they launched it in about 3 months. If they launched it in about 3 months, either they are the champions of development, or, which I think is probably the explanation, they probably had it in mind for a while, probably prepared MVPs and tests for a while, and when they felt the moment was right, and actually their momentum was, Netflix is setting the stage, Netflix is everywhere, well, we can go with a cheaper price, better catalog, much more focused on our product, and, well, everybody who has Netflix starts to also have Disney. I think this is a very, very brilliant business strategy, because rather of trying to dislodge Netflix, they just became complementary to Netflix. Plus, they had a very strong product catalog, a history of almost 100 years of entertaining families. They are very, very good at streaming. I tried the service, and quality is on par with. Plus, on my side, they have Marvel, so they got me there. Nonetheless, once again, it works, and something that show how fast it can work once you embrace the strategy. They generated more revenue with Disney Plus last year than they did with Disney Studios, which is all the movies and all the theaters. That gives you an idea of the speed at which you can basically re-harness and re-boost your business. And when it works, well, it really works. That being said, I said, I start with the good thing, and the second one, it's the bad thing, because as you can understand, it's a joke, but the marketing guys are back, and we're going to have to work with them. It's kind of self-serving. I myself spent more time marketing than developing products. Nonetheless, we thought that this would work. And that's kind of sorry, 10 years after, We all thought that, we put a portal in place, we put our APIs and this documentation on the portal, we go to programmable web and GitHub and document the fact that we exist, and customers will come. They will use our APIs by clicking on a button and filling a form, and will start to do business. Well, the reality is it will happen, but not that way. What I call the full self-service sales model is reserved to very, very strong, I think, and unique value proposition. Maps, for instance, is something that's very expensive and hard to do. There's only 5 or 6 people in the world, one is in France, that can do that. Nonetheless, that means that if you have a generic or something that is a little more within process API, chances are you're going to have to hire some guys to do marketing. I'm going to repeat exactly what Mehdi said, but I think that was the trend that was both technical and marketing last year. We start to see a different, I'd say, if we were in the old days, value chain players that are starting to specialize, or network of value that's starting to specialize. And we have the emergence of different trades in API, providers of API. That's most of the people, and you are probably part of them, that build them and provide them. Enablers, people that help you assemble them or package them with other APIs, so you can have, payment plus SSO plus catalog lookup. And distributors, who are people that actually have shelves where people come and grab APIs. And a good example for me is Shopify, which is a very good example, of in the end, it's at the same time somebody providing value to the end users, in that case, small business that want to enable e-commerce, and at the same time that distributes APIs for payment, catalog management, promotions, layout, etc., etc. So we're seeing a more and more complex world, which means a more and more competitive world. And that's kind of the novelty. It's a good news from a market standpoint. If we always say in marketing, if there's competition, it means there's a market. So more competition, the more the market exists, and the more actually we can be hopeful and sure that we will succeed in it, or at least take a share. On the other hand, it means that selling an API, having your API known, is more and more difficult if you just put it there. You need some guys, marketers, storytellers, with business case managers, that start to produce together the proposition you can do with APIs. From our standpoint, we see 3 major ways of using APIs today. None of them is only about technicalities anymore. Basically, is how do I embed part of my experience in somebody else's experience? And to do that, as Mehdi mentioned, you have to bundle your APIs with not you. And that's hard sometimes, because that means in the old world that would have meant partnership, that would have meant sharing a shelf at a distributor with the competitor. So that's not necessarily something we like. Truth is, that's how it's going to work. And it works pretty well, because you can simply bundle and embed some proposition, like a green light, who assemble a set of APIs and from other producer. And it's really full APIs, identity and theft protection is a full API they use. They don't do anything. They just assemble, market it, create an experience that will be compelling for the end user. And if they win, well, they'll become an API distributor. You can be partially embedded. You just say, okay, I work with these guys, and together, if you fill those 2 forms, or if you use the 2 APIs customer, I can do something cool. My favorite version, because I think it's the most powerful one and the one we should all thrive for, is what I call the fully embedded. Fully embedded means that you become part of the process of the other product. We worked with some fintech recently, and some very, very big ones. And it's interesting to see that, Airbnb doesn't provide a full scope insurance for disconnection if the Wi-Fi doesn't work in the stuff you rented. Maybe as a Airbnb renter, I would be glad to have that service, but it's not Airbnb's job to do that. What they can do is maybe full embed some person that would do an insurance. That would be Wi-Fi is working insurance for coworkers, but that would be embedded in Airbnb, but also everywhere it needs to be. And I think this is kind of the future. We need to imagine co-business cases. We need to work with our distributors or partners or bundler to imagine what will be the best experience for our customers. And I think that's very, very encouraging, because that means that the future is in, cooperating on the network, building fantastic stuff together, rather and more clearly than trying to do it what everything goes. But the bad news is to be blunt, you're probably going to have a marketing and sales guy working with you, probably several, and price will go up because we need to have a cost of sales and cost of design and cost of experience, and all of that will be managed. But when you do it, it can be very, very powerful, because, I don't know if Swile to you is going to be a competitor, because you are producing some kind of, process to deliver sports subscription to someone. But on the other hand, you can say, it's a new kind of player. It's at the same time a competitor, but also a retailer of my APIs, and also a partner, because we can build fantastic stuff together. They chose a position. They're going to try to improve the life of employees all over the world through services that they package in a card. And maybe at one point, if you want to access me as an employee of Fabernovel, you'll have to work with Spendex or Swile or these companies, because they'll be the new distributor. It's at the same time a new step in sales and in deploying APIs. And on the other hand, it's very exciting, because, they found, I think, a pretty good compact employee happiness proposition. They execute it well. They live with APIs and in our worlds, and they know how to enable us. And they can become a very strong partner of the future, monitoring the time. And no, because I named it that way, of course, for the storytelling, but I think that's the first thing we need to have in mind, and probably the hardest. I was discussing with Mehdi when we were preparing this edition, and I said, for the first time of my life, and I never thought I'd come to that, 20% of my time at Fabernovel and working with customers is around ethical subjects. And that's new. And you cannot expect it, because otherwise, the world we are building together and the world you are building with APIs and new proposals and new software could be uglier than we'd want. Of course, the elephant in the room is on the slide. It's the Facebook papers or the Facebook files. At one point, and that's new, thing happens with machine learning and algorithms and full software management that, at the edge is not that cool. So once again, it's not yet a drama, but Mehdi talked about regulations coming. Regulations come when, you feel something is not quite right. And in that case, what happens is that, we enthusiastically created experience. We try to be competitive with customers, and we gamified a lot of stuff. But one of the questions we'd have is, should we gamify anything? If you look at that screen, it's a real product. Sorry, I took this example, and it's at no point the product is fantastic, and the idea of Bling is really, really cool. And believe me, the people that are receiving the cash from Bling that needed a quick credit are very happy to use it. On the other hand, it's kind of a festive ambience and a festive experience. And sometimes I have to say, the reality is that you shouldn't gamify taking a credit, because it's a responsibility that the consumers will bear, and we cannot gamify everything. So it's an ethical problem. I don't know if it's that big of a problem. All I see is that in the 90s, remember, we had this over-endetment problem, specifically in Europe, and people that didn't really realize what it meant to take a credit. I think it's still a fantastic service, because, being cash short happens to everyone, specifically if you're an individual developer. On the other hand, making it, a little feast or a little gamified stuff like in Candy Crush, the fact that I just lended you 100 euros is something we should think of. And maybe after that very cool screen, we should have the reminder of, owe 100 euro to someone. Please think about it. Please reflect on it, because I think it's our responsibility as experience producers as a whole to think about that stuff now. Otherwise, all what will happen is that we won't be used, or we'll create cool businesses that unfortunately don't work as we want. And how do we do that? Well, we need to think about, do we really give a choice to our consumers when we are part or within the bundle of an experience? Well, are we really helping our consumers choose? 20 minutes, I'm going to make it. I don't know, because as you know, the magic is that every Netflix interface is different and tailored to have me consume. which is cool. On the other hand, it's been a while I haven't discovered something on Netflix by accident, by pure serendipity. And that's the first thing, at most of algorithms are reinforcing our behavior. And I like it when I discover something I didn't think I'd like. So maybe there's some, leeway, or maybe algorithm shouldn't be that efficient. And sometimes it's another question, this is the play something button. That's when you cannot find something you want to watch because you've been basically browsing the catalog for an hour and nothing's happening. Well, of course, it's a good idea for Netflix to tell me maybe you want me to play something by accident, and maybe you'll discover something you like and you didn't know. But sometimes I think, why don't, well, if you don't feel like watching TV, you can either read something, play Scrabble with your friends, take a walk. There's so many things to do. And maybe as API producer, as idea producers, as experienced producers and managers, we need to think sometimes about these alternatives. Not necessarily because everything should be focused on business, but if everything is focused on consumer, it's about making them happy. It's about making my usage happy. And maybe if Netflix tells me, well, why don't you take a stroll rather than watching 1 hour of serial you don't really like, I would say, okay, this is a way cooler company than I thought, and definitely I will stay with Netflix rather than always pushing me toward, almost choices, but not. And AI can do that too. I was looking at that one, which I love. I like the idea that a social network whose job is to distribute as much content as possible takes on himself, thinks a little back and tell me, you're tweeting away content you didn't read. Are you sure you don't want to read it? Because that can be done too. That can be automatized too. I don't know between tweet it and think about your tweeting, which message is the better for business short term. But I'm pretty sure this is very good for long-term business, because that means that I'm respecting my user, I'm respecting their value, thus I'm going to have a more profound business. And if you think about the future, our business will be to be embedded with other business. I'm sure of that, which means that we'll have a small responsibility within the experience of other businesses. We are sharing clients, we are sharing experience, which means that even if I'm a developer, even if I'm just an engineer, I don't think anymore I can be just an engineer. What's happening a lot with regulation is that we are discovering that, there's some ethical questions about using technologies. That's not new, but it's a real question, is what I am producing fair and using with fairness? Are they using my API with efficiency, of course, but also with decency? Am I lucid on what I'm doing with my customers and when I'm bundled with other people? Am I very clear about what's going to happen to their customer? I think although it's an extra charge, we must think about it. And at the same time, as a marketer, it cannot be only about business anymore, I think. And if the Facebook paper are teaching is something to all, is that, just business for the sake of business is not necessarily what consumers want more and more. And today, for instance, sorry for the non-French guy, but that just means that this burger is paying his razor a fair price. And I'm going to buy this burger not anymore because of the brand, not because it's glossy and shiny, not because it has a huge experience. I'm going to buy it because I think it's fair to buy something that's fair with its ecosystem. And that's kind of a business proposal that is new, but I have to think about it. And just one reason why I have to think about it, because if I want to have the best talents working at Fabernovel, I need answers to those questions, and they want to make sure, the young generation, that I'm fair. And I think that's something that will be included in our thinking, because we can't just be technical anymore. And to finish quickly this presentation, there's two questions that came to my mind. First, there's in this room and watching these keynotes, I hope, a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning, API experts that are technical experts. And those ones, we make sure that it works. We make sure that we are producing cool stuff, and we make sure that what we are producing works. And I try to think about the motto of database developer when I was young and doing that. It was garbage in, garbage out. That's still true. And we spend a lot of time making sure that what we produce is of quality. But I think there's a new trade, which will be business case designer and manager, even in machine learning things. And my job, if I do that business, if I choose that trade, will be to set up an experience that's fair, ethical, and efficient with partners, and also to make sure that, I think a new saying for those that are familiar could be bias in, bias out. Truth be told, I had another acronym starting with a B, but I don't think you can do that anymore. But that's kind of the mindset, If I put bias in my API, if I put bias in my machine learning, I need to think about the outcomes. I need to think about what's going to be produced and the impression it will get. Which means that as producers, as marketers, as in an ecosystem that more and more is going to be a constant bundle of proposition, even if I'm just a developer, we are all responsible for the end experience. And it's easy to do, just try your products, eat your dog food, think about what you're doing with a little bit more space and is it working? It's fairly easy because in the end, I'm pretty sure we have 3,500 good guys listening to Apidays and nobody wants to do harm to anyone. Although we have responsibility, and even as a technical guy, I cannot do sorry guys, I'm just a developer thing. I have to think about everything. So I said it was ugly. It's probably not the case. To me, because I'm an enthusiast, it's just more interesting than I thought to work on APIs. Because of course we need to create technical and the business and experience value, but we also will need in the future, and that could be a new chapter in this conference, to think about what is our value for society. Are we improving it? Are we making it better? Are we making the little bubbles go up right rather than left down? Our value for the planet, do we need to, is what we are doing frugal enough and fair enough with the planet and of the future generation? And all those questions, and of course, is value for people on the bottom, and that was a misspelling, but we need to think of more stuff. And I just think it's not a challenge, really. It's just making our trade more interesting and more complex than we anticipated, but so much more valuable. And I hope that tomorrow, as of the skills and the thinking we'll have when we are building some new bundles and partnering and doing all that good stuff, we'll need to think about all that in that wheel. And I think it's fascinating. It's a new trade and hopefully a new generation of products coming up. I am ready for your questions if you have any, and I finished almost in time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cyril. Thank you for this. Yeah, that's really the good, the bad, and the ugly. One question: there is a great book called "Wizard versus Prophets." Wizards are the one who try to solve everything by technology. Prophets are the one who say we need to change the mindset, the people, to accept sobriety or to accept, fairness and not to always optimize everything. Do you think it's the wizard or the prophet who are the solution to what you were talking about?
It's always the same thing, I think it's a mix of both, because one saying I like, is there's a thin difference between wizardry and sorcery. And I think the prophets are there to make sure that we don't cross that line. Of course, we want a more optimized world, because I for one, enjoy Netflix and Disney Plus, and I'm very happy of all these usages and the fact that it's so easy to pay and that there's no friction in a lot of my life. So that's cool. On the other hand, I think regulation on some recent events showed us that it cannot be full optimization of the time, because at one point, I'll be blunt, but a very good optimized business model could be slavery. It's very cool.
We have a question from Anthony.
Sorry?
You have a question from Anthony. He asked if we should write a manifesto signed by the giant at first, like bending their arms in a sense, like obliging them to put, like their value, to write their value. Because they say, even if I'm doing APIs the ethic way, I'm not sure my user will consume another AVIL API or service.
Yeah, I think that will be part of the rules of the game. Regulation is usually there when good sense between partners failed or where we went too far. So I think, today it would be a good time to say, okay, people, let's put together, like we did in the time of free software, a chart or a guide of conduct, I don't know, we could call it, write it down and make sure that, we respect it, and that's how we work. Yeah, I think it's the right time, because we built something that are very, very powerful, that works more and more, so it will be more and more diffuse, and it's our responsibility as business owners and ecosystem players to set the rules we want to live by. And yeah, why not? And just to finish that conference, because I saw it's the end of my time, on an idea I had yesterday that could be a way of doing it, don't be evil. I was thinking, what if all the medias for one day decided that they close their APIs for content to all the distributors?
Yeah, like the media blackout.
Just to, reestablish the negotiation parts, and then, yes, write a chart to say, okay, this is how we're going to be fair. I think it's time, yeah.
Yeah, digital media riots. Why not? Let's try.
Why not?
Thank you very much, Cyril.